Excel accounting practice problem. Pay payroll taxes. Get ready because we're about to excel. Here we are in our Excel worksheet. In prior presentations, we put together the Excel worksheet from a blank sheet. Now continuing to enter transactions into it if you have access to it. There's two tabs on down below, an example tab and a practice tab. The practice tab starting out where we left off last time. The example tab in essence being an answer key. Let's take a look at it now. In prior presentations, we entered the payroll. We've entered payroll for 2 months at this point in time. We have the payroll set up, or imagine it to be set up on a monthly basis, meaning we process the payroll on a monthly basis as opposed to weekly, bi-weekly, semi-monthly. And then the question is, well, how often do you have to take the withholdings that you have and the payroll taxes that you have incurred when processing payroll to pay them to the people you need to owe them to? Typically, the government is what we're going to be focusing in on here as we're focused on the payroll liabilities. Although, if you had other withholdings, such as 401k plans and, say, plans for health insurance and so on, the question would be then, how often, when are you going to make those payments? Basically, decrease in the liabilities that you had incurred when processing the payroll and then paying them off with a check. So the transaction's fairly straightforward. It's just kind of like an accounts payable type of transaction where the checking account is going down, the other side decrease in the liability. If you were to do this in software, like a QuickBooks software, it would still be just a check type form because that's the form that is typically used to decrease the checking account. However, it'll often be kind of a special widget type of thing that is tied into the payroll that could be useful or helpful to calculate the payroll that needs to be paid at that point in time. So you got to be a little bit careful if you're doing this in like a software, even though it's a fairly straightforward transaction from a journal entry standpoint. There's also the question of how you're going to pay it, meaning you got to make sure that you line up whatever your payment process is with whoever you're paying, whether that be the federal government and the Social Security, the Medicare, and the federal income taxes. We're going to break them out into 3 separate paychecks, even though we're focusing in on the federal taxes, in essence going to, in essence, the same place, the federal government. And then, of course, the state taxes would have to go to a different location, and so on and so forth. To help you out with that process, you might then have different liability accounts up top that are breaking out by category. When you set up the payroll, you could set up for Social Security and Medicare, which typically go, or you think of them kind of together in some ways, and then have another liability for the federal income tax, even though it's going to the Fed in general as well, and then the state taxes and so on. Or you'd have to set up the vendors when you're setting up the payment process to make sure that you're lining those up and paying them the correct way. Also, you have to make sure that you're paying the correct way in terms of the format of payment, electronic transfer, whatever the setup needs to be when you pay the payroll taxes. We're going to imagine here that the first month of taxes that were incurred in January are now due in February. And then we incurred another February payroll because we're paying payroll on a monthly basis. It will still be a liability and would not be paid until the following month of March. So we're currently in February. We're going to be paying off the payroll liabilities that we incurred in January. That's the scenario. Let's go back to the practice tab to do that. Scrolling down, pretty straightforward transaction on 228. In terms of the form or the journal entry, which is going to be a debit to the payroll liability, decrease in the payroll liability. The other side then going to the checking account, decrease in the checking account. I'm going to indent that here. And then the amount that we're going to have, note that if you paid right after you processed the payroll, then you might just basically decrease the entire payroll amount. And so that would be kind of straightforward. Here we have 2 payrolls that have been included, making it a little bit more difficult to calculate what is due at this point in time because it's only the first payroll, which we can get basically from the ledger or we might get it from the GL. So for example, if I go on over to the payroll liability general ledger and say, okay, here's our payroll liability up top. So this beginning balance, you'll recall, was basically the ending balance for the month 1 that we incurred when we processed payroll in January. So that would be the total number, but I'd still like to break it out further into the 3. I'm going to break it out into 3 components, 3 checks that will be breaking it out into federal income tax, Social Security, and Medicare. So I'm going to go all the way to the ledger that we put into place, the payroll ledger, and look at that we calculated. We used this to calculate the payroll for the first month. Now notice the liability accounts down below. This total of the liabilities is in essence what we increased the liabilities by. We had the federal income tax, which was only a withholding because we don't pay federal income tax. I mean, we do as the business, but we pay it on our net income. This federal income tax is the employee federal income tax, and that we're withholding, and we don't have any matching with their federal income tax that we're dealing with. Social Security, we have the employee and employer portion, and then we have the Medicare employee and employer portion. So I'm going to write 3 separate checks basically for these 3 amounts on down below. So let's go all the way to the right to do that. And we'll just pick these up with a formula. Doing a lot of scrolling here, sorry about that. We also need to clean up. I never cleaned up my sheet here, so let's go ahead and hide some cells. I'm going to hide from the skinny all the way to the left and hide those cells. Let's hide those, and then I'm going to take my ending balances from last time, copying those. I'm going to make those my beginning balances this time. Right click, paste, 1, 2, 3. Let's delete the activity in the middle so we can focus on just these payroll tax journal entries. There we have it. Okay, so now I'm going to add my data here. So I'm going to pick this payroll liability up. I'm going to say equals. I'm going to scroll all the way to that ledger again, to those payroll ledgers. Let's go up a little bit. Payroll ledgers all the way to the right, and look at the liability for the first month that we had. Let's pick up the FIT first. FIT. There's the debit and the credit. I'm going to record, in essence, just the same journal entry here, but the vendor, might be different, or you might break out, the different vendor, even though it's going to the same liability account. It's going to be the payroll liability is going to go down, and then the other side's going to the checking account again. Once again, an indentation. This is obviously also on 228. Let's do one more. Hold on a second. This needs to be up here. 228. And then 228. Let's pick up this amount. The payroll liability is going to be equal to, we're going to go left till we find that ledger again. So we're going to go all the way, I'm just going right here till we find the ledger again. Get a little tired here. I get going the wrong way. Left, right, up, down. Here we go. All the way to the right. There it is. Now we're going to pick up the liability of that 83. Now let's pick up the 866 this time. Social Security, both employer and employee portion. There's the debit and the credit. And let's do one more. Same accounts, payroll liability and the checking account. And we're going to say a third check, so it'll go into our bank with 3 separate checks into our checking account in our system, and that's how we expect to see it on the bank statement. So I'm going to say equals. Let's do this again. We're going right. This is on the right side all the way till we get to our payroll ledger thing again. There it is. And then we're going to be picking up the 83 and enter. There we have it. There's our debit and credit there. Let's post it out now. And I'm going to make the first one green so we can focus the eyeballs on it. Greenifying it. Liability account in AC18 equals, we're going to be debiting the 1080, bringing it down to the 3025. Other side going to the checking account. Checking out the checking. Check out the checking. Scrolling down 1080. That brings the balance to the 96893 for both the month and year to date. So that looks good. No impact on the income statement here because the income statement was impacted when we processed the payroll. Let's ungreenify that. If you don't have that blue, you can go to the standard, and there's the blue right there. That's the one. That's the one. Next one, let's make this green and do the same posting process. The posting process to the trial balance by going to the payroll liability. That's going to be here in AC18, F2 plus F2. Scrolling down, picking up the 866. Then we're going to the checking account. So scrolling up to the checking account, and we'll post there as well in AC4 F2 plus F2. Scrolling down and picking up that green one, the 866, and enter. So now we're at the 9627 for both February and year to date, and the 2159 for both February and year to date. One more time, ungreenifying this or bluifying it, whichever you'd like to see it as. Or you could see it as both at the same time or whatever. Liabilities up top. Liabilities, posting the last one, same thing, F2 plus F2. Then we're going to pick up that 83. Then the checking account. Scrolling up, F2 plus F2. Scrolling down, and we're going to be picking up then that 83 there. So now the checking account's at the 95944 for both the year to date and the February numbers. We've got the payroll liability at the 2076. That should be the payroll liability that was incurred for the month of February, which we have not yet paid, but we did pay off the January, which should be this 9029. Let's also post this now to the GL as well. I'm going to ungreenify this one on the bottom and regreenify the one on the top so that we can then post it out again. So now we're going to be in the payroll liability. Here's the payroll liability on the trial balance. We'll also find that on the you know what? Let's do these three at the same time again, because we performed that complex high level of complexity procedure last time. Let's do it this time. Three at a time. This will be faster. We're going to do those three that are going to go into the payroll liability at the same time. Focus, people. Focus. Because this is going to be, we're executing it. We executed it last time. And so we're going to do it again. We're going to do it again. So this is going to be equal once, the same, 228. So now we're in the BN. We're back in BN. BN. So we're going to go BN8 equals left to the wall. And then we're going to pick up the first green one, which is 1080. Totally BN. Everything's BN in the column of BN. BN column is where you want to be in. This is BN9 equals left to the wall. Scrolling down. And we'll pick up that 866. 866, enter. So there we have that one. One more time in column BN10. BN10. I'm BN10. So we're scrolling down. We're going to be at the 83 and enter. Muy bien. Now we're at the 2076. That 2076 should match what is on the trial balance. 2076 does indeed. So then let's scroll down and we'll do the same for the checking account. Three things at one time. I'm going to ungreenify. Then we're going to do this one, holding down control, this one, and this one, all in the same set of posting procedure maneuvers. Here we go. Here we go. It's like a triple axle spin for ice skaters. So we're going to go here. We're in the AH18 equals. We're going to go left to the wall. Scrolling down, we're going to pick up the 1080. Bringing the balance down to 96893. Then next one, AH19 equals. Picking up the 866. And one more time to complete the posting procedure. One more time at the 83. Bringing the balance down to the 95944, 95944, matching what's on the trial balance, both on the month of February and the year to date. Noting one more time that that 2076 should match now what is on the February liability. Let's double check that 2076. If I go back to my ledgers over to the right, to my payroll register stuff, and I look at the February stuff, we had the liabilities that are now at the 2076 because that's what we incurred in February. We paid off the 2029 with 3 separate checks, which was the payroll that was incurred when we processed payroll in January. So everything looks the way, I think everything is lining up the way it's supposed to be lined up. So we lined everything up correctly. And then this is where we're at now with regards to the TB trial balance year to date, as well as the month of February.